Guys, so happy Monday. Today we're going to talk about just square roots, and then Thursday, we'll get into nth roots. So, the first thing is, what's the opposite of raising a number to a power? Well, that would be taking the root of that number. Alright, so the big thing is, in general, if b squared equals a, then b is a square root of a. If a is non-negative, then a non-negative number b such that b squared equals a, denoted by b equals the square root of a, is the principal square root of a. And we're going to talk about some special cases. If there's a negative on the outside, you can take the square root of it. It's only whenever there's a negative on the inside that you can't square root it. And we're just talking about just square roots. We're not talking about the other nth roots yet. So you're just kind of focusing on square roots for this lesson. The first one, the square root of 100, is just 10. Alright, if I have a negative on the outside, I take the square root of the number, and I multiply it by a negative. So the square root of 49 is 7, and I multiply by a negative, I get negative 7. Now this one, square root of negative 25, since the negative is on the inside, I can't have an answer, so I just put a 0 with a line through it. I'm going to say, not a real number, because that's what you're going to see on Hawks. Alright, the other big thing is if you have square root, there's a 2 on the outside, we call it the second root, we just don't write it. But if you have an even exponent, okay, you're figuring out how many times 2 goes into the exponent, you have to put absolute value around it. So like this example, 100, the square root of 100 is 10. Now x squared, if I take 2 divided by 2, I get 1. That's the absolute value of x, because it was an even exponent on the inside. Alright, same way here, square root of 25 is 5. I have to do the absolute value of y, because it was y squared. 2 divided by 2 is 1. You take an even exponent, and you divide it by 2. You have to do the absolute value of it. Same way here, not absolute value. Square root of 7x squared y. Well, I can't do the square root of 7 or y, right? But I can do the square root of x squared, because that's the absolute value of x, and what I have left over goes on the inside still. So these are some examples that you're going to see. If you have any questions over those, big thing is on Hawks, make sure you put in the absolute value sign. Okay. Product rule. Square root of ab equals square root of a times square root of b. So an example, if I had the square root of 3x, that's the square root of 3 times the square root of x. Vice versa, the quotient rule, you have the square root of 3 over x, that equals the square root of 3 divided by the square root of x. And the big thing is b cannot be 0, right? Can't have 0 on the bottom of a fraction. So we're just going to practice simplifying some ones. These are going to be problems that you'll see on your homework. So the first one, square root of negative 16, or negative times the square root of 16, sorry. Square root of 16 is 4, times a negative would be negative 4. Again, if it's a negative on the inside, you can't do it. It's not a real number. Whereas negative 4 is a real number. This one right here is a real number, because I can split this up into the square root of 25 over the square root of 64, which would be 5 over 8. The last thing we're going to do today is we're going to rationalize the denominator. So if you have a square root on the bottom, you can't have that. So to get rid of it, you multiply by that root that's on the bottom. Right, on top and bottom. So now on top I have 1 times the square root of 3, which is the square root of 3. If you do the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, you get the square root of 9, which is the square root of 3 over 3, because square root of 9 is 3. Alright, so same thing, if you throw an x in there, you're still going to multiply by the whole square root. So now I have 15 square root of 6x on top, over, on bottom, you're going to have just 6x now. Now you need to simplify 15 and 6. They both can be divisible by 3, so I have 5 square roots of 6x on top, over 2x on bottom. Alright, that is all the lesson is today. Okay, it's not a whole lot, but you have to know how to square root before we can get into the nth roots. The big thing, guys, whenever you're doing this one, is if you have a square root and it's an even exponent, okay, and I divide it by 2, you have to put the absolute value around it. So one more example that I could do. Let's say we do the square root of 49 x to the 18th. Okay, well, the square root of 49 is 7. 18 is an even exponent, so if I divide it by 2, I get 9, so it's the absolute value of x to the 9th. Okay, so just don't forget that basic rule. That's the one thing that's really important from this lesson. All right, if you guys have any questions with the Hawks, please let me know, and I will help you. Otherwise, I'm just going to assume you guys are doing fine. All right, have a good day, guys.